Would you like me to reduce the speed, sir?
No, it's fine. I got it.
Finally, I'm getting there with this contraption. About time too, I know, but I had a lot to learn.
What was the score when you started? That's the whole point.
I thought it was on 0.
It couldn't have been on 0 because it would have gone round more than once.
For a while, it looked like this, as I worked things out and added more stuff and took things away. But this week, I took it apart and made it all a little neater. When you last saw it, I got it as far as the little heads popping up and the switches under them sending a signal when they were bopped. But that still left the challenge of counting those bops and also timing the game. I had started by using a switch that was activated for every circuit of the belt. So every time the belt went round, it switched to switch. And that worked fine, but I wanted to have the option of the belts running faster or slower within the same time, which meant experimenting with timers of different sorts, which was really interesting, but quite frustrating. For instance, I thought it would be fun to have a pecking woodpecker as the timer. One that sat at the top of the frame and was released at the beginning of each round, and when it reached the bottom, it could trigger an off switch. So very simple and visual. The problem was getting the woodpecker to climb down a pole slowly enough. Something like 45 seconds would be good. Now I didn't want a great long pole, so I experimented a lot with different woodpeckers, different sliders, different weights, different springs and different length of springs. And the really interesting thing is that changing those things didn't make much difference at all to the rate of fall. Who'd have thought that? You can have a tight hole in the slider that bounces often, or a wider hole that bounces less often, but either way, once it's at right angles to the pole, the woodpecker slides down, doesn't it? And the slower one will fall further in those moments because it's at 90 degrees for longer, because it's moving more slowly, but it's also not at 90 degrees for longer too. Okay, so fascinatingly, they end up falling at more or less the same rate. Apparently it's something to do with gravity harmonics, whatever that means. Maybe you can work out some way of doing it. And I could use this if the pole was mounted on the ground and it was very tall, but that would make it a bit vulnerable. So I looked at different methods, like this string wrapping mechanism, very simple and nearly as good visually as the woodpecker. First, the string wraps itself around the pole and then unwinds and wraps itself the other way. Gradually, energy is lost and the weight works its way further down the pole with every cycle, until eventually it could settle on a little pressure switch and the game finishes. And I like that. Sounds nice and simple, doesn't it? But the switch at the bottom would have to be circular and very sensitive. And I couldn't find anything suitable. But it's a nice idea, so I hope to come back to it sometime, somehow. I did look at all sorts of clock escapements too. Wonderful things, escapements, but maybe a little sensitive to being used outside in the wind. And I decided that actually there's more than enough going on in this game already without an elaborate and delicate timer. So in the end I used a small geared motor instead. A bit boring, but I hope reliable too. This one rotates twice in a minute, so I printed a couple of pulleys to slow down the rotation. And I included a bump on the side of the pulley that switches a limit switch when it comes round. So that turns the motor off after approximately 45 seconds, regardless of how fast the belts are travelling. And there will be a dial on the front side so people can see the time passing. But how does it start again then when the limit switch is activated? Because everything stops. Well, I added a push switch that overrides it while you keep your finger on it. And after a couple of seconds, I can let it go and it'll carry on then on its own. I have a new speed controller too for the main drive motor itself after burning out the smaller one. So I can set the speed and also vary it depending on who's playing the game. It came with a little knob, but I changed that so I could use some Lego gears. With a shaft that goes through the bulkhead so the speed can be changed from either side. Helpfully, the controller came with a digital readout. I guess it's the percentage of the maximum speed, and 50 seems about right, more or less. Now the other big challenge was the counter. I was using a solenoid to pull a ratchet round and round, but that wasn't strong enough, so we added a second solenoid.
2 solenoids. Perfect harmony. Look at that, that's much more. It's working better, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. If you put more pressure on that now.
Yeah.
You can do then, because it couldn't handle that before. Yeah.
Well, great. Why not have 3 then?
It's better. Yeah, could do. 4, 5, 6.
Oh no, come on.
But the solenoids were not very happy. For one thing, they were probably getting fuzzy messages from the switches, and that was partly because my new printed heads were heavier than the ping pong balls that I'd used first of all, so the heads were tripping the switches just by bouncing up and down. Bit annoying. I was fearing I'd need to redesign everything, but in the end I just put small pieces of sponge under the arms, and that seems to have solved that problem. But the solenoids and the switches still didn't get along very well. I don't know why. I burned out some switches and 2 solenoids. So I added a relay into the circuit along with a flyback diode, which sounds complicated, but it really just means that the switches are not directly connected to the solenoids anymore. Because apparently when you turn solenoids off, they send back a great pulse of energy that can burn things out. And fitting those helped a lot, and I should have done that in the first place. We changed the solenoid too for a bigger, fatter one, and reprinted the ratchet wheel twice, trying to get the right amount of travel with each click, and adjusted the tension on the pawl, and I replaced the old hacksaw blade arm with a heavier one. Now I think when it gets excited it still jumps more than 1 tooth, but that's rare now, and mostly it clicks around 1/100th of a rotation with every click. I made some hands for the dial, which I need to paint up properly so you can see what they're supposed to be. And of course, I need to draw up some dials themselves so people can see how much time they have left and how many they've scored. So that's it. It looks pretty complicated, but actually it's all still simple electromechanical stuff, and all the circuits are beginner level really. I'm using a car battery for the power, and I might add a couple more light switches if I feel like it. Apart from that, I think it's all working.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3.
Your voice won't be able to cope with going up that high.
100.
Excellent. So it's actually counting them all.
And the little arm was just loose the whole time. God, the two really jumped up at the same time.
Okay, let's start again. Let's put this at the bottom.
Definitely didn't get 100. It's hard to hit the ones at the back.
Yep. Yes, it is. Yeah, I can't just push the button, I have to hold the button. Isn't it? Wow, that's excellent. You seem to have scored 105. It seems unlikely.
Been hitting loads. Got some catching up to do now.
Going very slowly. Okay, whoa, okay. Whoa. Okay, sir, whoa. Right, so let's speed you up a bit. Back down to 0.
Wow.
Enough of this cheating, sir. Okay, so 44 is a bit. It's too slow as well.
You can get plenty wax on 44.
Okay, 150.
150. What?
To think I pay Ashley to have this much fun. I don't know. So now all I have to do is make it look nice. Oh man, that's quite a challenge too.